Hello, my name is Alicia and welcome to the Spanish mini course. This is the first lesson where you're going to learn your first phrases in Spanish to start communicating right away, and also you're going to learn the pronunciation in this language. So let's begin with our greetings in Spanish. Saludar, los saludos. And you're going to say hi in Spanish informally by saying hola. Hola is informal, but it is polite, and it will be pronounced just like I did. Hola. Any native speaker would say so. Hola. All right? And you may want to be a little more specific. So during the day, you can say buenos días. And in the afternoon, you say good afternoon. So you may want to say buenas tardes. And after dark, you will say good evening, good night. And in Spanish, it's just buenas noches. Okay? We're going to repeat this, but now I want you to have a full conversation in Spanish in the elevator with your Spanish neighbor. So let's see how this conversation goes on. You're going to ask, how are you doing? By asking politely, ¿qué tal? And the response will be, well, normally, I'm good, I'm fine. So you say bien, and you say thank you, which in Spanish is gracias. Bien, gracias. You may want to pronounce, as I did, gracias, but you can also pronounce gracias. It is also correct. Bien, gracias. Bien, gracias. If you are not so good, you may say normal. Gracias. And you want to say goodbye because you have already chatted too much, so you're going to say hasta luego. Hasta luego. And if you want a short goodbye, you say adios. But adios can be a little formal. It can mean that's a final goodbye. So you can use it to, well, say goodbye to the mailman if you want to, but it's also used when you do not see the person ever again. Adios. Okay? If you want a short goodbye and informal, you may say chao. Chao works informally. All right? Now let's repeat. In Spanish, you have seen hola. Hola. Buenos días. Buenas tardes. Buenas noches. ¿Qué tal? Bien. Gracias. Normal. Gracias. Hasta luego. Adios. Okay, I know it's a lot to take in, but take your time, okay? If you want to pause the video, you can. But if you want, you can keep on learning because we're going to see important words. Importante. Words and expressions such as por favor, which is please in Spanish. Por favor. And as you already know, gracias is thank you. If you want to say thank you very much in Spanish, you say muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, or also muchas gracias. Whatever you like best. The reaction to thank you in Spanish is de nada. De nada. And if you ask for forgiveness, you say in Spanish, perdón. Perdón. And the person will react by saying, no pasa nada. No pasa nada. To say yes in Spanish, you say sí. To say no in Spanish, you say no. Okay? And we'll repeat. Importante. Por favor. Muchas gracias. De nada. Perdón. No pasa nada. ¿Sí? No. You see? Well, in just a couple of minutes, you have learned a lot of Spanish and you can practice if you want. In the material that you can download, it's included in the course, you have here the expressions that you just saw with the answers. So if you want, take your time, do the exercises, and if you're ready, let's keep on learning new important things, such as the alphabet in Spanish, el alfabeto. And if you want to name the letters in Spanish, you can say A, B, and so on. And you can also say la A, la B. La is the article that we are using here, okay? So, like the in English, the letter A, la letra A, okay? And in Spanish, you have the following letters. I'm just going to read them aloud to you. A, B, C, Ch, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, L, M, N, Ñ, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. I know it's a lot to take in, but take your time, okay? Pause the video, watch it again, whatever you prefer. And take notice that the fact that some letters have two possible names in Spanish. So you can say Y, Y, B, B larga, V, B corta. And well, you may have observed that many letters have different names in Spanish and English. That's very normal, all right? Two different languages, well, things have different names, okay? And it's very important for you to learn the names of the letters in Spanish, because I'm going to say the letters always in Spanish, okay? So make the exercises if you want to, because it's going to help you understand better all this new info. And now you're going to learn, well, el acento, okay? El acento is this symbol that you see here on top of the vowels. Any vowel can have an acento, but not all words have acento in Spanish. Acento is what you see here. So, A con acento, E con acento, I con acento, O con acento, U con acento. Any vowel can have acento. What does this acento do? Well, we're going to find out in a bit. Okay, so take your time, do the exercises, and when you're done, we begin with la acentuación, the stress. Why the stress? Because when we speak, we do not speak mechanically like a robot, okay? We have, well, our voice is going to be modulated, okay? So we have a rhythm, a melody, and it's important for you to understand what rules are the ones that, well, make us speak the way we do in Spanish. Why is the Spanish rhythm so sing-songy? Well, because we have a couple of rules that are really simple for you to learn, okay? So the first rule is that if a word has an accent, there is the stressed syllable, because every word in Spanish has a syllable that is going to be stressed, okay? It's going to be pronounced a little louder with some emphasis on it, because, well, we have a melody, and this is the reason for that, okay? So if you see the word with an accent, then you go and stress it. You say, América, perdón, and this is perfect, okay? This is the way we speak in Spanish. América, perdón. In English, the rules for the word stress are very complicated, okay? But in Spanish, no. You see acento, and then you stress this vowel. Another rule is the following. If a word ends in vowel N or S, we stress the second to last syllable. Okay, so not difficult. Just memorize vowel N, S, because many words in Spanish will fall into this category. So you're going to say in Spanish, guitarra, volumen, crisis. And this is the way to pronounce it. You stress the second to last syllable. It doesn't matter how long the word is. you're going to stress the second to last, not the last, but the syllable right before that, when you have words with this endings here in Spanish. So it seems like a little complicated, but it's not, okay, because you get used to that. Don't worry, okay? I know it's a lot of information to take in because it will be like this when you learn any new language. At the beginning, you will see, wow, so many things. Wow, why is that so? Well, I'm explaining to you the basic things so you can start understanding how the language works. But don't feel overwhelmed because it's not complicated. It's new, but it's not complicated. And my tip for you is to listen to a lot of Spanish, okay? It doesn't matter if you do not understand the words. Just listen to music in Spanish, watch TV in Spanish, listen to podcasts, okay? Just leave it in the background so you can do this work unconsciously, okay? So you do not have to be aware of the sounds. Just listen to Spanish music in the background, and this will help you, well, catch some things that you will understand better when you have more contact with the language. Okay, so just be exposed to the language because this will help you speak it better. Okay, you just have to get used to how the language sounds. You need to understand some principles. This is why I'm here, but you also need to be in touch with the language. Just like this, okay? It's a simple tip, but it's very, very helpful. All right, so now let's learn la pronunciación, how to pronounce words in Spanish. And you're going to see that in Spanish the vowels are a, e, I, o, u. And my tip to you as an English speaker is not to transfer the sounds of English into Spanish, okay? Because you need to separate both languages. English has some sounds, some letters, and Spanish has other sounds, other letters. You're trying to, well, stick the English sounds in the Spanish language. It doesn't work like this. Forget English. Just use the sounds that I am showing you, okay? And the sounds for the vowels in Spanish will be only this. A, E, I, O, U. And when you see the letters the way you see them here, we're going to pronounce them as you know. A, E, I, O, U. Okay? For instance, the word hola that we saw at the beginning of the video. Hola is what a native Spanish speaker would say. Hola, because you have the vowel O and the vowel A, and they sound just like you heard. Hola. But many English speakers, they have a tendency to pronounce Spanish words as if they were English words. And it doesn't work like this, because Spanish natives wouldn't do that, okay? Only English speakers try to do that, and this is why many English speakers have a strong English accent when they speak Spanish. Okay, it's normal to have an accent, but it's not necessary. You can avoid having such a strong English accent by following this simple rule. Just when you see the vowels in Spanish, pronounce the vowels in Spanish as they are in Spanish, not as if you would be speaking in English. So you will say hola. You have o, you have a, you have hola. Someone who speaks English and speaks Spanish with a strong English accent would say hola. And this sounds not how a native speaks, okay? So you can avoid this phenomenon. You just use the sounds that Spanish is, well, letting you know that they exist in our language. So try not to think with your English brain, because you're getting a new brain right now. When you're learning a new language, you get a new brain, okay? And with your Spanish brain, you're going to use the Spanish sounds. Don't try to think in English, transfer the sounds and the letters. It doesn't work like this. Use these 5 sounds and you are golden. Okay? So, a, e, I, o, u. Don't forget that. And doing this simple trick, your Spanish will be, wow, really better. Okay? I promise you that. And now we're going to see many examples of words in Spanish and our names of places, so you do not have to remember these names. In Spanish, the letter H is silent, so you write it, but you do not pronounce it. You say Honduras, Bahia. And the letter ñ is pronounced as you hear here. España, Cañamel. Okay, this is the way it's pronounced. And the combination of CH has the sound of ch, like in English when you say match. Okay, so you say Cochabamba, Chile. All right? And learning new things, you see all these combinations of letters that in Spanish are going to have the same sound, which is this one. I put here the symbol in the international phonological alphabet. Okay, so if you do not know the symbol, just ignore it, but I think it will help you understand better what I mean. Okay, so this means that the sound will be k. Okay, so I'll say the names of the letters in Spanish. CA, CO, CU, QUE, QUI. But in these combinations here, QUE, QUI, the letter U is silent. Okay, so you write it, but you do not pronounce it. This is why you're going to say Caracas, Colombia, Cuba, Querétaro, Quito. You see here, I did write U, but it did not pronounce it. Querétaro, Quito. All right? Well, so let's learn some new sounds. Well, not so new, okay? Because you're going to have these combinations of letters that are ZA, ZO, ZU, CE, CI. And these combinations of letters have two different sounds depending on the region that you are in. So if you are in Latin America, in the Spanish-speaking countries in Latin America, you'll hear all the time S when people use these combinations here, okay? So in Mexico, Argentina, Costa Rica, and so on, people are going to say Zaragoza, El Pozo, Pozuelo, Barcelona, Ciudad. And this is correct, okay? No problem here. But this is the sound that you hear in, well, Latin America, and also in the Canary Islands in Spanish and in some regions in southern Spain. But in Spain, generally, when you see these letters here, you hear a different sound. You hear the same sound that you have in English when you say thing. Okay, so you're going to have your teeth between your tongue between your front teeth. Okay, so you're going to say thing in English and the same thing when you say in Spanish Zaragoza. Okay, so you're going to lisp here when you see these combinations. So I speak Spanish from Madrid, and this is the way people will pronounce it over there. So we are going to say Zaragoza, El Pozo, Pozuelo, Barcelona, Ciudad. Okay, but this is not the only correct way to pronounce it. You can pronounce it as S if you prefer. Okay, it's your choice. Well, so let's learn some new things, like this sound, which is G, that you also have in English. And in Spanish, you have G when you have the following combinations of letters. GA, GO, GU, GUE, GUI. And in GUE, GUI, the letter U is silent. So we are going to say in Spanish, Málaga, Bogotá, Guatemala, Guernica, Guinea. And here you did write U, but you did not pronounce it. Guernica, Guinea. Not complicated at all. So let's move forward to these combinations of letters that are JA, JE, JI, JO, JU, GE, GI. And we have two possible sounds depending a little bit on the region that you're in. The very common way of pronouncing them is by using your throat, just like in English when you say hello. So it's not a strong sound. It's the middle of your throat here, and you expel the air by saying, for example, Jalisco, Ojeda, Jipijapa, Tajo, Tajuña, Gerona, Gijón. You see, it's like in English, hot. No problem here. But if you want to make a stronger sound, you also can. And this is the way many people pronounce it in Spain, okay? So we are going to do almost the same thing, but the sound is going to come from a deeper place from your throat, okay? You're going to really make a strong sound. So in Madrid, for instance, people tend to pronounce Jalisco, Ojeda, Jipijapa, Tajo, Tajuña, Gerona, Gijón. It's stronger. If you do not like it, you do not have to do that. I'm just telling you because some people do pronounce it this way. And pay attention because you have this beautiful country which in Spanish will be pronounced Mexico, soft, or Mexico, stronger. But it will not pronounce Mexico. This is wrong, okay? So do not do that because, well, the letter X in Spanish does sound like taxi, generally in Spanish, but Mexico is an exception. So you're going to pronounce soft or strong. Mexico, Mexico, whatever you like best, but you are not going to pronounce Mexico. This is wrong, okay? Well, and moving forward, we're going to learn the letters Y, Y at the beginning of the word, and also Y in the middle of the word. And you remember Y can also be named Y, whatever you like best. And you have two options here, okay? You see, Spanish is, well, very flexible in some aspects of the pronunciation, okay? So in many regions, people are going to pronounce the sound I. So they're going to say Llanes, Villa, Yucatán, Cayum. This is correct. You can do that if you want to. But you have a second option, which is to make the same sound that you do when you say in English jeans. So many people, native Spanish speakers, are going to pronounce it stronger. Okay, so they are going to say Llanes, Villa, Yucatán, Cayum. And this is correct. Okay, no problem here. But it's just one way of pronouncing it. You can pronounce, as I told you, Llanes, Villa, Yucatán, Cayum. And many native speakers prefer this way of pronouncing. And pay attention because the letter Y at the end of the word always sounds like I. So Uruguay. But it doesn't happen very often. And then you have, and this might be a shock to you, but generally in Spanish, we do not make a difference between the letters V, B, because both of them are going to be pronounced as B, as you say ball in English. So generally in Spanish, people will say Venezuela, Valencia, Barcelona, Berga. Okay, and this is because both letters have the same sound, generally in Spanish-speaking countries. But there are some regions where people have the tendency to pronounce this letter V as you do in English when you say television. Okay, so some people may say, for instance, Venezuela. Okay, or Venezuela, depending on Spain or Latin America. It is possible, but it's not very common. So general Spanish will be Venezuela or Venezuela, depending Spain or Latin America. Okay, so do not be overwhelmed by this phenomenon. It's really generally so in Spanish-speaking countries. Okay, and Berga, you see here written with the letter B, is a name of a village in Spain, Berga. But the same word written with the letter V is a very offensive word that you shouldn't say. It's pronounced exactly the same way, Berga, but it's not a word that you should use in Spanish because it's very, very offensive. But it's the name of a village here. Berga, as you see here written and pronounced, is not offensive. But if you write it with the letter V, well, then it's offensive. All right? Well, so let's keep on learning. And The last thing that I'm going to teach you today is the pronunciation of R. And this is very hard for many English speakers who speak Spanish because, well, you just need to think with your Spanish brain. So give your English brain a rest, it deserves it, and work with your Spanish brain. But you're going to see first what you do when you say dólar, because the letter D is the same in Spanish and in English. So, okay, let's work a little bit with your English brain, but just a little bit, okay? So you're going to say dollar in English, all right? Dollar, dollar. And pay attention, what does your tongue do? When you say dólar in Spanish or in English, you're going to have your front teeth, you're going to have your tongue. Your tongue does this movement, okay? It touches the front teeth and it goes back. Dólar, dólar. This is the movement that you're going to do when pronouncing D. But you're going to give it a small twist because to pronounce in Spanish the letter R inside of a word or at the end of it, you're going to use also your tongue, but only the tip of your tongue. And it's going to touch the front teeth, but very quickly. Okay, so you're not going to expel the air, you're just going to do plum plum. And that's it. That's all your tongue does. Your tongue doesn't bend backwards as you would, for instance, when you say this final R here. Okay, you say in English dollar, and your tongue does that. This is very complicated. We do not do that in Spanish. Too much movement for the tongue. The tongue just does tum 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 tum, and that's it. Which is why in Spanish you're going to say Paraguay, Mérida, Ecuador. You see, by Ecuador, the tongue does D with a lot of contact and slowly, and then does dor. This R at the end is really quicker, okay? Ecuador. And that's it. This is what you do. So do not roll your tongue backwards, okay? Because this is okay in English, but not in Spanish. People will be able to understand you, of course, okay? But it's not what a native speaker would do. And now that you know how to say Paraguay, Mérida, Ecuador, you're going to give it one more twist because you're going to use the tongue that is going to be on your mouth like this, but your tongue is going to vibrate because you're going to expel the air. And with the strength of the air that it's being expelled, then your tongue will, well, make this vibration, okay? And this is the sound that you can easily identify when a native speaker is speaking. So we say Costa Rica, Rio, Purranque. This is what we do, okay? So it's only the tip of the tongue that is making this movement here. This is trembling actually, and with this vibration and the air that is being expelled, you hear this sound, okay? So you say Costa Rica, Rio, Purranque, okay? And I know it's different and it's difficult at the beginning, but think about that. Your tongue is a muscle, okay? And you go to the gym and you do a lot of workout to have great abs, but why do not do the same thing with your tongue? Because when you learn a new language, you get a new brain and a new tongue too. So you're going to exercise a little bit your tongue because the tongue will learn, okay? You just need to teach your tongue how to do its job. So you're going to let the tongue loose in your mouth. You're not going to bend it backwards. You're only going to expel the air. And when you expel very relaxed, you're going to see that your tongue is trembling when you say Costa Rica, Rio, Purranque. It's just working with your tongue, really, okay? And let's see some examples of words which have both sounds. So you have Rosario, Romero, Rio Negro. You see what happened here? At the beginning, R, and inside of the word r. Okay, just boom, boom, and you are done. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this first contact with the Spanish language. I know it's a lot of information, but I know that in the beginning it's a little work, but the worst is already done. Okay, the most complicated parts of learning a new language is what you have already seen. So it's getting used to a lot of new sounds and some new ideas, but it will get easier and easier. So be strong, keep on learning, because it will be worth it. And Spanish is a language that's really worth learning. Okay, so at the end of each lesson in our mini course, you'll find the summary. What you saw here, I'm not going to go over it with you because, well, it's the same information that we have already seen. So I leave it to you. You can take a look at it and, well, keep on learning, because you have a lot of material in the mini course to learn all the information that you just, well, learned now. Okay, so thank you very much. Muchas gracias. And see you soon. Hasta luego.